If you listen closely, Loch Ness still speaks, not in roars or splashes, but in a whisper of pixels and noise. This is a story about a watcher who learned to hear that whisper when almost everyone else had tuned out. His name is Eoin O'Faodhagáin, a hospital clerk from County Donegal, Ireland. And for nearly a decade, he's been the figure in the doorway between faith and doubt, the lone investigator staring down a screen when the shoreline is empty. Eoin isn't perched on a windswept promontory with a pair of binoculars. He hunts in a new wilderness, the bandwidth between a live camera and the imagination. Back in April 2018, he captured the clip that would set his name inside the modern Nessie story, a 10-minute sequence on the Shoreland Lodge's webcam, showing something move from right to left across the bay near Urquhart. Boats came into frame, the object sank, then resurfaced lower in the water. That was the first time many people heard his name. And it wouldn't be the last. Local press picked it up. Nessie caught on camera, ran one headline. Journalists described the witness as a Donegal hospital clerical worker who had recorded the live feed and watched, stunned, as the shape traversed the loch. To believers, it was electric. To skeptics, just another smudge on a screen. Either way, the watcher had arrived. Since then, Eoin's life has taken on a quiet rhythm. Work, home, and hours of scanning the loch through webcams hosted around its perimeter. The Clansman Hotel, Shoreland Lodges, Loch B and B. When the surface turns slate glassy and the sky bleaches to a cold pewter, he leans forward. A pixel pulses. A wake betrays a mass. The cursor finds record. He has uploaded many of these moments to his YouTube channel, building a public log of anomalies that, to his eye, sketch the outline of a creature history refuses to bury. And it hasn't just been once. In 2021, he reported disturbances lasting minutes. In 2023, regional papers called one clip a classic Nessie sighting, a long, dark presence rolling in mid-loch. In 2024, a fresh burst of attention followed footage of two dark shapes near shore. Size of a minibus, he said at one point, igniting the familiar arguments across headlines and comment sections. The story keeps resetting like a heartbeat. There's a cost to keeping watch when others say the watch is over. In 2021, the official Loch Ness Sightings Register began to tighten its rules on what counts as an official webcam sighting, not out of malice, but to keep the ledger meaningful in an age of endless pixels. Without extremely clear detail, sometimes said to include unambiguous morphology, many webcam captures would simply remain unofficial. For Eoin, it meant some of his most cherished moments stayed outside the gate. For critics, it was overdue. For the story of Nessie, it was another line drawn in water. If you've followed this mystery, you know the name Steve Feltham, the man who moved to Loch Ness in 1991 and never really left. Feltham has publicly dismissed a lot of webcam claims, and newspapers have quoted him doing so specifically in response to O'Faodhágain's footage. The exchange hasn't always been gentle. On blogs, barbs have flown in both directions. But even in disagreement, there's a symmetry. Two men, each holding a different end of the same rope, one on a shore with binoculars, the other online with a mouse, both staring at the same ancient water, unwilling to let the line go slack. What keeps someone like Eoin going? Part of it is biography, the fascinations seeded young, the ease with technology, the late-night quiet in a small Irish town where the glow of a Scottish lake becomes the room's only lamp. Part of it is temperament, the patience to sit with ambiguity, to admit, I don't know what that is, while still insisting that the not knowing has weight. To see like Eoin, you have to reconstruct the moment. The water has mood, ripple signatures caused by breeze, by boat wake, by fetch and refraction. Wildlife has tells, the stiff line of a cormorant's neck, the low, oily push of a seal, bird skitter versus otter roll. Optics distort. A small wave can mimic a large body. Parallax makes the far shore hover. Compression makes distance lie. Over hundreds of hours, you teach your eyes to subtract the ordinary. What's left is the residue you clip and upload. a cylindrical shadow that holds its line too long, a double-humped shape where no wake lines predict one, an anaconda neck that shouldn't be there at that range. It's not proof, it's a fingerprint, and a fingerprint is enough to keep you watching. Various compiled reports from 2018 to 2024 describe precisely these features. Journalists call. Some headlines lean sensational, others keep their distance. The drumbeat never fully stops because, deep down, Loch Ness is a mirror. When skeptics call webcam clips ducks and sticks, they're not always wrong. When believers read a hump in the latency of pixels, they're not always naive. What both sides feel is the gravitational pull of a question that refuses to age. Here's what never makes the paper. The nights, nothing happens. The cursor hovering over go live. The sheer endurance it takes to keep believing that one more hour might change a century-long conversation. You might ask, has Eoin stood on that shore? He has corresponded publicly with shoreline stalwarts, and he's been the focus of repeat local coverage because of what he captures from afar. But I couldn't verify a documented in-person visit or a face-to-face meeting with Steve Feltham in Dores in any reliable outlet. If it happened, it hasn't been reported in sources I'd feel comfortable citing. What is documented, and central to this story, is the friction between shoreline and screen, and how Eoin chose the latter without apology. So why tell his story? Because mysteries don't only need heroes who plant tripods by the water, they also need stubborn archivists who refuse to let the digital era be written off. In the archives of this legend, the O'Faodhagáin shelf is already there. 2018, 2021, 2023, 2024, dates, files, and clips that map a man's quiet conviction across a living lake. Maybe Nessie never shows herself clearly. Maybe we need the watcher more than the monster. Someone to remind us that attention is its own kind of belief, and that sometimes the loneliest vigil is the one that keeps the legend alive. Another sighting on the webcam. In other news from Loch Ness, we keep returning to this lake because there's something human about a far-off shape that won't resolve. And in the last few years, one name keeps surfacing with the wake lines. Eoin O'Faodhagáin, a man who turned a living room screen into a lakeside watch post, and in doing so, became a lightning rod for belief. Begin with the basics. In April 2018, Eoin recorded a sustained 10-minute event on the Visit Inverness Loch Ness webcam near Urquhart Bay. Press noted he was a hospital clerical worker from Donegal. The footage, whatever it showed, was long, patient, and difficult to shrug off as a gull or a twig. That clip seeded a habit: capture, catalogue, upload. Unlike centre stage expeditions, O'Faodhagáin's method is deliberately small. He watches. The cameras do the travelling. Clansman Hotel's vantage, Shoreland Lodge's window on the bay, Loch's view line. He notes time and water state. He hits record only when the surface begins to misbehave. When a long black cylinder pushes a wake that doesn't match the wind. When two humps hold formation longer than a wave train should. His YouTube uploads became a breadcrumb trail, the logbook of a solitary modern hunter. In January 2021, he reported multiple disturbances, ripples that persisted for minutes, not seconds. Local media in Donegal profiled him as a dedicated Nessie hunter, doing it all from home, camera to couch to community. A small town, a bigger lake, and the wire that connects them. Two of Eoin's posts helped define his public persona. The classic sighting of 2023, a shape rolling mid-loch on the Shoreland Lodge's webcam, picked up by the Inverness Courier. A 2024 sequence near the Clansman View, where two dark shapes seemed to pace the near shore and a larger mass briefly suggested a body the size of a minibus. Each time, the cycle repeated: excitement, analysis, dismissal, defense. And each time, Eoin returned to the window. Now context. In recent years, the official sightings register became choosier about webcam entries. The bar rose for detail and morphology. Some claimed that was overdue triage. Others felt it sidelined, honest, interesting anomalies. Either way, for Eoin, It meant many submissions would live in the grey zone, public, debated, but not official. That stung, and it sharpened the lines between camps. Enter Steve Feltham, the Dawes-based full-timer whose life on the Loch is its own legend. Feltham has spoken bluntly about webcam claims. Newspapers quoted him directly in response to O'Faodhagáin clips, calling many such sightings false alarms. Blog comment threads captured sharper back and forth. But beneath the clash is a curious harmony. Both men have given their time, and a piece of their identities, to the same impossible chase. One sits by the water, one sits by the wire, and both carry the weight of belief and ridicule. Watch closely with him. See the low, coherent ridge of a wake, with no boat at the head. See how it holds shape as Crosschop tries to erase it. How it reappears after a brief submergence, but lower, as if a mass resettled deeper under the surface. That's what hooked Eoin the first time and kept him hooked. It's not proof, nothing short of a surfaced body will be, but it is patterned, repeated, and stubborn things deserve to be witnessed. Accounts from 2018 onward describe these exact features. It's easy to dismiss webcam watchers as credulous. Eoin would tell you the opposite, that faith is not fantasy. Faith, to him, is the long discipline of looking, the willingness to be wrong hundreds of times to be right once. On one blog thread, he drew a line from St. Columba's legend to his own practice. Critics pounced, but the point stands. The Ness story has always braided observation with a certain kind of patience that borders on devotion. Viewers often ask if O'Faodhagáin has visited the Loch and met Feltham at Doris. I went looking. News coverage, interviews, social posts. I found criticisms and quotes that directly connect the two by name, but no reputable source confirming a documented meetup on the shore. That doesn't mean it never happened, only that, as of today, I can't cite it responsibly. The Watcher's confirmed arena remains the digital shoreline. So why does any of this matter in 2025? Because a legend survives in the margins, in the places most of us don't bother to look anymore. Expeditions will come and go, sonar sweeps will find puzzles. I will trawl pixels. But between those headlines, people like Eoin keep the continuity. They're the ones who make the daily ledger, the living weather report of a myth. Consider the 2023 Black Hump coverage, a discrete, dark form holding shape in open water, enough to send editors scrambling and skeptics sharpening their knives. Feltham publicly poured cold water on it, and the register's stricter rules likely kept it off the books. But the clip itself, it exists, it resists easy parsing, and it pushed the conversation forward for another season. That's not nothing. In 2024, one outlet framed O'Faodhagáin's back-to-back webcam anomalies as hinting at two creatures. Sensational? Maybe. But it's also an example of how repetition across days, even in low-res space, can suggest patterns that single events can't. For the watcher, recurrence is the real quarry. Imagine the clock striking 2:39 p.m. The water, dull pewter. A long neck-like trace appears, too straight for chop, too persistent for birds. You film until your fingers ache. Then you sit with the aftermath, the comments, the articles, the laughter, the thanks. And the next day you do it again. That's not delusion. That's a practice. You don't have to believe in Nessie to respect that kind of attention. And if you do believe, Eoin's vigil feels like proof of something else. Not a monster, but an ethic. That someone, somewhere, is still watching carefully enough to notice when the world goes strange for a minute. Pixels can lie, so can memories and waves, but sometimes a lie leaves a true outline behind. In that outline, Eoin O'Faodhagáin keeps faith with the water, a faith that doesn't demand you bow to it, only that you look, as he does, with patience, humility, and the courage to be wrong.